If you were the smart one growing up, the kid teachers praised. The one who understood things quickly. The one people expected to succeed. Then you probably know this strange feeling. You know you're capable, but somehow, you still struggle to start things. You procrastinate more than you should. And sometimes you quietly wonder, why am I not doing as well as I know I could? It feels confusing, because being smart was supposed to make things easier. But for a lot of people, it quietly does the opposite. Being the smart one creates a hidden trap, and almost nobody talks about it. And the strange part is, it usually doesn't show up until much later. Maybe this has happened to you. You sit down to start something important, an assignment, a project, something you know you should do. And instead of starting, you open another tab, check your phone, watch a random video, not because you don't care, but because starting suddenly feels heavier than it should. And the weird part is, you know you're capable of doing the work. That's what makes it frustrating. The strange part is, this problem usually starts years earlier. When you grow up being called smart, something subtle happens. Your identity starts forming around that label. You're not just someone who studies, you're the smart kid. And at first, that feels good. You solve problems faster than others. You don't always need to study as hard. Things just click. But over time, something dangerous begins to grow underneath that identity. Pressure. Because if you're the smart one, you're not supposed to struggle. You're not supposed to fail. You're not supposed to look confused. And slowly, without realizing it, your brain starts protecting that identity. Not by working harder, but by avoiding situations where that identity might crack. And this is where the real problem quietly begins. Here's the hidden cost of being the smart one. You start avoiding effort, not consciously, but psychologically, because effort feels risky. Think about it. If you try really hard and fail, then maybe you weren't actually that smart. But if you procrastinate or barely try, your brain has a safety excuse. I could have done better if I really tried. That sentence becomes a shield, and over time, that shield quietly turns into a habit. Assignments get delayed. Projects start late. Ideas stay in your head instead of becoming real work. Not because you're lazy, but because your brain is protecting the identity you built years ago. Here's what most people misunderstand. This isn't about laziness, and it's not about discipline either. The real problem is something much quieter. It's the identity you built years ago, when everyone started calling you the smart one. And without realizing it, that identity can slowly turn into pressure. Pressure that makes starting things harder, not easier. Let's break down why that happens. And once you see the psychology behind this, everything starts making sense. Psychologists call this something interesting: fixed identity thinking. When people believe their ability is something they either have or don't have, instead of something they build. So every challenge starts feeling like a test, not just of your work, but of who you are. If you succeed, it confirms the identity. If you struggle, it threatens it. And that's exhausting, because life, real life, requires messy effort. You try things, you fail, you adjust. But when your identity is tied to being the smart one, failure doesn't feel like feedback. It feels like exposure, like someone just discovered the truth. That pressure quietly kills momentum. The good news is, this trap is actually fixable. The way out of this trap isn't becoming more disciplined. It's changing the role your intelligence plays. Instead of seeing intelligence as something you prove, start seeing it as something you use. Smart people don't avoid effort. They design systems that make effort easier. They lower friction. They build routines. They make starting simple. For example, instead of saying, "I need to study for 3 hours tonight," a smarter system is, "Open the book, study for 10 minutes." That sounds small, but small actions remove identity pressure, because starting is no longer a performance test. It's just a step. And once the brain feels safe starting, momentum begins to build naturally. But fixing this requires one important shift. Here's the shift that changes everything. Stop trying to be the smart one. Start trying to be the consistent one. Consistency is quieter, less impressive. It doesn't look special at first, but over time, it becomes far more powerful. Because the people who actually succeed long-term aren't usually the ones who were labeled the smartest early on. They're the ones who kept showing up. Not perfectly, not brilliantly, just consistently. They did the work when it felt messy, when the progress was slow, when the results weren't obvious yet. And most importantly, they kept going even when they didn't feel like the smartest person in the room anymore. Because real progress doesn't come from protecting an identity. It comes from building momentum, from small steps repeated again and again, quietly, until those small steps become something much bigger. If you grew up being the smart one, you don't need to prove anything anymore. You don't need to protect that label. Let it go. Replace it with something better: curiosity, consistency, progress. Because intelligence isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's about learning faster from them. So tonight, try something simple. Start the thing you've been delaying, not perfectly, just for a few minutes. Lock in and keep going. Because the truth is, most people don't fail from lack of intelligence. They fail from misunderstanding how their mind actually works. That's what this channel is here to explore.